Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we have a ton to get into, headlined by the fact that the Orlando Magic, according to President of Basketball Operations Jeff Weltman, had their phones blowing up over potential trade talks around some of their young core. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting with that on the docket. According to Jeff Weltman, the front office of the Orlando Magic heard multiple offers about a handful of the guys on their team. The exact quote was AB, being Anthony Black, Tristan Da Silva, Wendell Carter Jr., Jonathan Isaac, Goga Batazde. Like a lot of these guys, have value. We got calls on all of them, but we want to be able to keep our young core together, really come out with a very strong starting lineup, and still have growth and depth behind that. It's going to be fun to watch us unfold. We have a little window where we get to see how that plays out a little. And in the meantime, we do expect ourselves to be a factor in the East. So what do we pull from a conversation like that one, right? The first thing is that we can say easily that identifies that the league also understands Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, all safe. That's an indication that Jalen Suggs' future as the starting point guard or as a lead guard for this Orlando Magic team, set in stone, right? With that being the case as well, it also says that they're going to be trying their best to prioritize their youth, given the fact that also coming off of this Desmond Bane acquisition, they're not going to have a lot of opportunities to go after smaller contracts that are not veteran minimums moving forward, given the fact that the cost control around the guys that were discussed outside of maybe Goga Batazde, who only has 2 seasons left on his contract. These other guys have 2 to 3 seasons left, and they have team control. If you're somebody like Anthony Black or Tristan Da Silva, there's team control because these are recently drafted players. Wendell Carter Jr., on the other hand, Jonathan Isaac is pretty under control and feels like a Magic lifer to a certain extent. But Wendell Carter Jr. and Goga Batazde are 2 players that you have to ask yourself whether or not you have long-term investment in those guys. As of this quote, it sounds like these are guys that, as of the current rotation going into the season, they want to hold on to. But something that needs to be factored in, and something that Jeff Weltman did not touch on in this quote, is that they are still a team that is $4.6 million away from the second apron, and it's a young squad looking to shoot for a real championship window. As he mentioned, looks to be a factor in the Eastern Conference. One of the most dangerous places to be. We just saw the Knicks do this. Granted, they made the Eastern Conference Finals, but now they're facing one of their toughest off-season decisions as of late in what they're going to do with their roster, given they have Mikal Bridges under contract and is looking for a contract extension, if I'm not wrong, this summer. Jalen Brunson is signed long term. Cat in terms of Karl Anthony Towns is signed long term. You have Josh Hart, right? You have a handful of guys that are under contract to the point that they're already smack right there near or right at the second apron and going to have to make some real decisions. The Orlando Magic are slowly but surely creeping into that similar lane where you're in that same pocket with the Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics even, right? Now, you could say that's a caliber of squad you want to be in the same breath as from a talent perspective. Financially, on the other hand, the Knicks are having a pretty rough offseason. The Cleveland Cavaliers are at the top of trade talks between Darius Garland and Jared Allen being potentially on the move. And the Boston Celtics sold their team. And they're going to be without Jason Tatum next year, which is also leading them to discuss possible trades that involve Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and or Derek White. Oh, by the way, those are all trade conversations that were going to come up even if they did repeat as champions this year, right? Just because of how expensive their team is. That's the conversation that the Orlando Magic have inserted themselves in. So as much as Jeff Weltman wants a young core with these guys all still in the mix, the reality is one of these guys is probably going to have to get moved in order to get them away from that second apron threshold. I think it's going to be Goga Batazde. If you guys listen to the last episode that we dropped, hey man, if you didn't, go tap in. But we put together a trade package that would send Goga Batazde to a center needy team, and in return would give some cap flexibility to the Orlando Magic and also give them a short-term rental for a guy who could add some shooting to their roster. But got to go check that out in order to, get the full package of what was put together. On the other hand, the only other player that I think would be really interesting in a long-term trade would be Tristan Da Silva, given the fact that he's got so much cost control coming off of only 1 year in the league and with his positional versatility and things of that nature, he could command something really nicely if you're able to put another, sizable contract next to it. There's a world where you would have to maybe put Goga Batazde and Tristan Da Silva in a trade package, or Goga Batazde and Wendell Carter Jr., something of that nature together if you're talking about trying to go after another significant player. Neither here nor there, even if they're just going after cap flexibility, I think one of these players gets moved off and it's going to be Goga. But you guys let me know if they have to go out, let go of somebody, and by let go I mean trade, and I think they truly do. Which player do you think it is? And which player do you, and if you think it's Goga, if you agree with me that it's Goga, do you believe that he also nets the best return? Or do you think that's a different player? Let us know in the comment section down below. Another thing that was very interesting over the last 24 hours is that there's news that there is a bit of a mini coaching carousel thing that needs to be watched within the Orlando Magic franchise. Mark Stein of the Stein Line, his subscription network, and Mike Scotto of Hoops Hype both reported during the weekend that Memphis Grizzlies were considering hiring Orlando Magic assistant coach Dale Osborne to be part of the now full-time coach Tuomas Liasolo's staff. Osborne is widely regarded as the Magic's defensive coach. He also does work with the team's centers. He is often seen on the sidelines shouting at players on defense and celebrating big defensive stops and plays. That's the big old news involving the potential coaching carousel. Why is that important? Why is that important? Because the infrastructure of the Orlando Magic over the last 2 seasons in particular as a young team is that they have overachieved significantly as a defensive-oriented squad. With switchability, big forwards, aggressive guys on the perimeter in terms of guarding at a high arc, having a guy at point guard in Jalen Suggs who is right there on par with players that we discussed at high levels of defensive guard plays like a Drew Holiday at that position, right? To man the perimeter space. This is a team that has built their identity off of the offensive abilities of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner as ball handlers and decision makers and shot creators, and their defensive tenacity. Coach Osborne has a lot to do with that. Another thing that's really important is let's think about some of the teams, because this is not necessarily a new trend, but it's something that's been a development over the last couple of seasons, more in particular, is something that teams seem to be emphasizing more. And that's the idea of, in the NBA, having their own version of a defensive coordinator. Of course, a defensive coordinator, their focus, as it mentions in the article, says that they focus on that particular side of the ball and maybe even a particular position group, in this case, center, which is very ironic when you think about the fact that Goga Batazde and Mo Wagner were two of the better center/power forward tandems in the league last year, just going gangbusters in terms of protecting the rim, creating turnovers, and just being complete menaces in transition defense and in transition offense for that matter. But still, right? Jonathan Isaac being a defensive anchor at that position where on a per minute basis, if you can get 20 elite minutes out of Jonathan Isaac, he's a defensive player of the year candidate. Like, legitimately. A lot of that has to do with coaches like Dale Osborne. Now, let's also look at the historical context around defensive coordinators. Once upon a time, Mike Woodson, when he was the head coach, and I believe this has happened in both instances, when Mike Woodson was the head coach, and in the instances in the early stages of when Tom Thibodeau was head coach for the New York Knicks, I think they both each served as defensive coordinator types for each other's bench, right? For each other's roster. Another notable name is former head coach of the Sacramento Kings, Mike Brown. Mike Brown was the defensive coordinator for the Golden State Warriors during the season in which they won the championship, which unironically was just prior to him, taking the Sacramento Kings job. And I assume, as many probably assumed at the time, that the Sacramento Kings went after a guy like Mike Brown, not only because he is a more, player-oriented coach, at least for the most part, didn't necessarily play out that way with De'Aaron Fox and those guys. It seemed like De'Aaron Fox liked them, but it seemed like the front office was not as big on the production that Mike Brown brought. But the goal was for him to bring a more defensive mindset to the team. Obviously, if Mike Brown didn't do anything, he surely did not bring enhanced defensive mentality to the Sacramento Kings. Neither here nor there. When he was a defensive specialist on the coaching pitch for the Golden State Warriors. They were a top 10, top 5 defense in the entire NBA. The very following season, they were in the bottom 15. It just goes to show you that the impact of a defensive coordinator can be so significant if the guy is tapped in, and not only with modern offenses and modern defensive structure, but also just understanding personnel in a way that's much deeper than what the head coach can do, given the fact that the head coach has so many hats he already has to wear. Calling plays, setting offensive sets, obviously rotations, managing injury situations, things of that nature, right? 2-minute drill, final shot opportunities, those different type of things. So having a defensive coordinator is huge. It will be very interesting to see if Osborne is highly coveted more on the job market, especially with the fact that there are teams that are needy for a defensive guru, if you will. But I think that the Orlando Magic should be doing everything in their power to keep a guy like this on their bench, because this is the type of stuff that helps for a young team to have these kind of voices in the room. Unironically, another part of the quote-unquote coaching carousel is that, of course, Jamal Mosley served on the Dallas Maverick bench before coming to the Magic, and he is in conversations, or at least the Orlando Magic are in conversations with Dallas Mavericks head coach Sham God, of course, being a guy who is, I believe he works with the point guards for the Dallas Mavericks. Could be interesting in terms of being able to create another, opportunity offensively for them, bringing in a fresh face to add more of a conversation around what the Orlando Magic can do offensively. We discussed in the last episode how Paolo Banchero wants to see more progression from the offense in terms of being more intricate, in terms of being more impactful, in terms of there just being more within it to create easy opportunities, right? I don't necessarily know if Sham God is that guy, but I mean, he's a notable legend within the space of basketball history, and a guy who could be, very influential for a backcourt that has Desmond Bane, Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs, all guys that have real offensive potential, but, you want to see an uptick from, given the fact that this team is going all in. Now, another all-in caliber thing that needs to be taken into consideration, and you can only do but so much with this, but Kevin O'Connor of Yahoo Sports discussed the idea of the Orlando Magic maybe having a potential trade package that could upset the apple cart in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. Kevin O'Connor suggested that the Magic fully commit to this season, if that's what they're going to do, trading nearly the entirety of their bench depth for a 2-time final MVP is something to consider, if this is what all their recent moves suggest. The actual trade package itself says that the Orlando Magic receive Kevin Durant, that's it. The Suns get Anthony Black, Jonathan Isaac, Jet Howard, Goga Batadze, and pick 25. The logic is, if the Orlando Magic are able to get that deal done, you get that deal done. But ultimately, I think unless the Suns are super high on Black, I don't think that's going to end up being the best offer. That's considering everything going on now. I think from the Magic side, you can afford it because you could just do the 1-year rental with KD. This doesn't have to be a signing extension. I don't know that I want to pay him any more money beyond this year. From the Suns side, I don't know if that's enough. I love that you included Black in that. This is his co-host, I believe, Titus. I think that Batadze is vastly underrated. We discussed that last podcast. So I'm not mad at that. He could be their starting center right now. Isaac is an affordable contract, good defensive player, definitely can give you solid minutes. Suns would want more out of that. I just don't know what more you could give them, because that's quite literally 4 of their bench there. I think that the Suns will be able to fetch a better deal for KD, but if I'm the Magic and this deal comes to my desk, I'm taking it. So, again, as mentioned in the article, as mentioned on the Kevin O'Connor show, his podcast with Yahoo Sports, it's an interesting trade package for a team in the Orlando Magic that clearly with the Desmond Bane trade has said, we're going all in for the next 2 to 3, 4 seasons, right? And Kevin Durant would be a great fit on this team. Another wing. You move Franz Wagner to like the 2 when he plays big wing 2 minutes like Paul George once upon a time did with the Indiana Pacers, right? You can put Kevin Durant at the 3 or the 4, preferably the 3 because Paulo Banchero is more of a downhill player and operates in the post. And then you also still would have, in this situation, you would still have Wendell Carter Jr. as your center. But you would have Wendell Carter Jr. as your center. You would have Mo Wagner as your backup center. You would still have Tristan da Silva. The only issue is now that your guard depth has just taken a significant hit after letting go of Gary Harris and Corey Joseph for cap flexibility purposes and moving off of both Cole Anthony and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the trade to get Desmond Bane. So you literally, outside of Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs, like zapped all of your point guard / off guard play. Does Kevin Durant add shooting? Yes. Does he add a high-level offensive shot creator to a team that desperately needs a high-level offensive shot creator? Yes. Do you milk all of your depth to do it? I disagree with Titus on this one. He said if they call and they give you this offer, if you're the Orlando Magic, you do it. I think if you're Orlando Magic and you do this, you are absolutely crazy. Kevin Durant, in this case, would be a 1-year rental with no extension probability. Yes, you're a no-state income tax team like the Miami Heat, who are a part of Kevin Durant's top 3, apparently, right? So maybe you could give him an extension, but would you want to? Given the fact that you're already so cap-strapped by the main 4 players that you have, would you want to sign a 37-plus-year-old Kevin Durant long-term within that situation? I don't know. Orlando Magic fans, you guys can let me know. But as far as I'm concerned, I do not believe that Kevin Durant in this situation is worth basically seeing the last dwindling hope of your guard depth go, putting yourself in position where you're giving up the 25th overall pick this year, which you don't have many first-round picks, if at all any first-round picks down the line, at least, flexibility-wise. And then on top of that, I mean, you just gave up your best defensive player in Jonathan Isaac for, again, a 1-year rental? I don't know. It was an interesting trade proposal. That's why I pulled it up as something, just because it seemed like basically people are viewing this as, if the Orlando Magic are going to go all in and the Miami Heat are on Kevin Durant's list, who says that the Magic don't just go even deeper into the hole and say, well, we want to be a part of that Kevin Durant sweepstakes right now as well. And if we have a package that rivals Miami, who says that we don't get considered as a Kevin Durant destination? That's cool in theory, but I think the reality of the situation is that I genuinely don't think that he's a good fit for this team if we're talking about factoring in the contract, factoring in the timeline, and just the mere fact that, I'm not going to lie, wiping out your entire perimeter play from the guard spot for Kevin Durant for 1 season, between me and you, is absolutely stupid. To quote Gilbert Arenas, who thought that the Desmond Bane trade was dumb, I don't think the trade was dumb. I do think the package was a little hefty, but I think that it was a good move given what they were trying to acquire. Going after Kevin Durant with a package like that is idiotic, in my personal opinion. Lastly on the docket, we have the Perfect Pick continuation series, where we are going to now talk about Danny Wolf from the Michigan Wolverines. He is a forward center at 6'11", 252 pounds, age 20, averaged nearly 13 points, almost a double-double with nearly 10 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.4 blocks, played 30 minutes a game. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's a high-level passer, a guy who cuts really well off ball, big-time hustler. He gives off a lot of what, honestly, this is a funny comp given the fact that he also went to Michigan, but he gives off a lot of Mo Wagner vibes. And if he can be a more consistent shooter, he could actually be a better player than what Mo Wagner brings, because of that high-level energy, the flexibility as a guy who could play as a tweener, 4-5, is something that gives the Magic something interesting to work with at that forward spot, because it gives them more center depth as well, which they have to consider, given the fact that guys like Wendell Carter Jr. and Goga Bitadze are going to be in certain trade conversations, right? This is probably my most unorthodox pick of the guys that we've discussed in this series so far, because he's the only guy that we've listed that is not coming into the league as a guy we know can shoot at a high clip. He's a guy who has shooting mechanics that indicate that he can be a high-level shooter, but he only shot 34% from three last year. And he shoots 65% from the free throw line. So he's a guy who does have the volume, though, that says he can be a stretch big. But can he be a Sam Hauser type like what the Boston Celtics have? Can he be that type? Can he be an Al Horford type? Can he be a Brook Lopez type in terms of being able to stretch the floor as a center slash forward? That's going to be the biggest question. Obviously, the Orlando Magic need to address their shooting if they're going to be a better team and a more playoff-ready team. On the other side of that, I think that everything Danny Wolf brings from an energy perspective, from an off-ball movement perspective, and from a shot creation perspective could be super interesting for what the Orlando Magic are trying to do moving forward. You guys let me know. Again, I think this might be my most unorthodox pick for the perfect pick series so far of what I think the Orlando Magic should do at 25. But I think given, again, another Michigan guy, another hustle guy, another big man in that rotation that is highly active defensively, highly active offensively, and does give you the potential to be a shooter. I think all are check boxes that the Orlando Magic tend to kind of look after. The Michigan connection obviously is always going to be an interesting thing as well because that's something that the Orlando Magic kind of seem to have a little bit of a infatuation with their program, given the handful of guys that they have grabbed from there. So with that being the case, you guys let me know in the comment section, is Danny Wolf the perfect pick at pick 25, or is there somebody from this series, or even somebody I haven't discussed yet, that you think would be a better fit for the Magic to take at pick 25 if they keep the pick going into draft night? You guys let me know in the comment section down below. But until next time, this is our Magic latest podcast. We are out.